Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the official digest for live letter number 71. Now, normally we don't do videos on the official digest because the unofficial translations that we covered a couple weeks ago would normally be sufficient, and I still think they are. The Final Fantasy XIV Reddit does good work when it comes to those unofficial translations. That being said, there are a few things that I feel like are worth diving into here because, well, it's nice to have an official translation in regards to certain things, and there are a couple more details strewn about. Without further ado, let's just go through the first part here and get to the meat that matters. This first part it's all the live letter stuff. There's nothing here that's really new, that really describes anything. Hey, here's the story, here's the patch name, here's the MSQ and a couple of screenshots, here's the side story quest, Hildebrand, Tadaru, here's the Manderville weapons, reminder you have till 6.25 to get the Hildebrand quest done. The new tribal quests are the Omicrons, and they're going to be quite rich in story, so please look forward to it. The new dungeon, the Fell Court of Troya. Hey, Final Fantasy IV reference. New trial. Swear to God, if it's not the 4 Archfiends from Final Fantasy IV, I'll be very disappointed. But then we get to the stuff that I think is actually worth stopping and talking about because there are more intricate details listed here. So first, this section is about the 1-week delay in Savage for patch 6.2. Now, historically in 0.2 and 0.4 patches, we have no delay. Normal and Savage release the same day as the major patch, and that has all sorts of downsides to it, one of which being, of course, having to skip all the other content and go into the Savage raids if you're somebody who likes to do racing. If you're an every content kind of person, it sucks. If you're just someone who likes to raid, it's definitely an advantage, and I made a whole video covering the pros and cons of having the 1-week delay versus not having the 1-week delay. However, they've given us some more clarity here. First of all, of course, reiterating that this is very different from what they've done before, and that this is going to be a test run. It is not for sure that we're going to have a 1-week delay in Savage going forward, and there are quite a few reasons for that. The first reason, as they list, are players having too much time to analyze normal mode before going into the World First race for Savage. The development team has simulated what might occur as a result of delaying Savage by a week, but if we were to go all out taking countermeasures against such side effects, there'd be no going back. As such, we'd like to try the 1-week delay this time, then consider feedback to decide whether to maintain the delay of future Savage releases, as well as consider possible adjustments to crafting related and economical aspects. So, this sounds like they've pretty much at least thought of everything that I was considering. The time to analyze is something they can absolutely design around by making the mechanics not translate quite so literally in some cases from normal to Savage. A lot of the times we learn ability names or ability orders, or we can visualize patterns because of the arena floors and the way everything's laid out. The work that goes into that time between normal and Savage for the expansion launch raid is significant, and it also happens with Ultimate. So they can mitigate that by just designing it so that there's not as much information to pull from normal into the Savage mechanics. But they're not going to do that this time around. So it sounds like we might actually be dealing with an easier 0.2 tier than we normally get. Now, it also sounds like we're still going to be having crafted gear on patch release as well as tome gear on patch release, which of course gives us more item level if we have to wait a week for the raid. Excuse me, those are adjustable around as well. So I don't see why we can't keep it. Just please keep it. I prefer this so much. I'd rather you adjust things around that than keep it. Tomestones, I think, is something they just need to design around for the fights and the balance checks and whatnot. But we'll see. We'll see what their plans are for that going forward. But this one, not going to be adjusting around any of that stuff. So probably going to be a pretty quick tier for the really, really hardcore peeps, the world first peeps, the usual. Now, for Unreal, we know Sephiroth's getting some adjustments. They restate one of the adjustments they mentioned from the live letter, leaving out one of the other things that they mentioned. But they're calling them minor adjustments, and they still think this is going to be one of the tougher Unreal challenges. I agree. Sephiroth, I think, is the hardest one that they're going to have released up to this point. Even though Titan and Leviathan had the fall-off mechanics, and, it was what it was. We've gotten adjustments to those things since. All of the encounters in the game now don't have permanent fall-off. You can be resurrected after falling off. So this will be the first Unreal that we've really had the opportunity to see how that affects it. And curious to see how it goes. I think that's the most major adjustment, is something they made already, and it's not even particular to that. Now, this is the namesake of the video, the job adjustment section. They first start by talking about fixing up some matchmaking for crystalline conflict and making it so that it's more difficult to time your cues to end up in the same match. That is what was used for win trading, as well as for coordinating or attempting to coordinate teams of 2 or 3 going in to give you a better chance of coordinating a victory. So they're trying to combat all of that kind of stuff. However, the big thing was their announcement of delaying the Dragoon and Astrologian reworks. Now, they had mentioned before that they were going to be giving them extensive adjustments in 6.2. However, after receiving some feedback, they have decided that because of the level of changes, how numerous they are, it would make it very difficult to explain why they're doing everything. And at this point, they're just going to wait for the expansion to do these extensive adjustments, what we would call a rework. So the fact that these have been considered expansion level adjustments tell you that the severity of them is likely fairly high. It doesn't have to mean that's groundbreaking. You won't recognize it at all, but that's significant because we've gotten reworks in 0.1 patches and 0.2 patches and 0.4 patches, and they tend to prime us for the future or fix some major flaws. So the fact that this is considered too extensive for that, just to me reads like that it's going to be that. We knew they were being delayed from the unofficial translation. We didn't know it was all the way until the expansion. Now, we will be getting minor adjustments to these jobs along the way, and it's a question of if any of those minor adjustments kind of lead it to being like 5.4's Monk, where it was given a clean slate, or if they're just going to be making the usual things, you know, maybe trying to fix up the jump animation again in some way, like maybe, you know, Spine Shatter, not Spine Shatter, Dragonfire Dive or something like that. Maybe little fixes like that. But that's crazy. I don't know what they're going to do with Dragoon. There are ways I've suggested they could go, but really the only reason they're reworking Dragoon is because they've hit a brick wall. There's no way to adjust the job, add new things to it. It essentially has hit a point of stagnation, and the only real motivation to change it is to liven it up, to give it a fresh coat of paint that they can then prime up as they go through the future expansions, which we've seen for other jobs prior. Astro, I think, is far more deserving of this. They've kind of just kept adding things to Astro while trying to keep the card identity. And I don't know if all of these things are really working together or feel as good to play as I think they would hope. I think, personally, the time mage aspects of Astro, the delayed heals, the storing damage for healing later, and even some things that were deleted off the job, such as their ability to extend buff timers, really was the identity that I think they could go in without having to compromise all too much of what is familiar to people. I think they'll probably simplify the card system. I think this whole seal system is not going to survive an expansion, which is pretty funny because we just got it. But I don't think Astrodyne is going to survive a whole nother expansion, at least not in its exact same form. And Astro is the one I'm really curious to see. Dragoon players, I get why you're afraid. Astro players, I don't think you can be any more afraid than you already are playing your own job. But I'll leave that up to the Astro mains to decide. We're also going to be getting some additional notes with these 6.2 patch notes. Basically a side post to let us know why they're doing certain changes. And we could probably expect this pretty consistently going into the future, especially with Dragoon and Astro. But that won't be until an expansion release to get adjustments of that scale, as they say right here. Now, the only other thing that's majorly important is addressing the critical and direct hit adjustments. They do explicitly state what we thought from the unofficial translation, that abilities with guaranteed critical direct hits are going to be made so that they can benefit in some way from abilities that increase critical and direct hit rate. This is something that has to be handled very carefully. If they just make it so that if you have a 100% crit rate or direct hit rate that you receive bonus damage on those hits, they need to make tons of potency adjustments to make sure that that doesn't hurt. And then if you have to make a potency adjustment because of that, then when you don't have those buffs in your party, you feel worse to play. So you even need those now in your party. I think they just need to scrap auto crit direct hit. I think it's not a good thing to have on abilities in the context of our game. I'd rather have increased potencies or something of that capacity, and then, you know, take your crit and direct RNG as you have on your gear. I think that is better for gearing. I think that's better for job design. And I really hope that's what direction they're going in with the change and with the other job adjustments. So fingers crossed, but that I'm more afraid of than anything else that we've talked about here. And the rest of this stuff is just, you know, PvP adjustments coming in season 3, duty support, Steps of Faith is going to be solo. Excuse me. Thorn March is going to be adjusted. They go over the variant dungeons and the different paths and the another path Criterion and Criterion Savage and Island Sanctuary, which we'll be getting more details on later. But these are all kind of reiterations of the unofficial stuff, as well as just things we already know. So we don't really need to go over any of this, and that reaches the end of the digest pretty quick. So let me know what you think. Are you afraid or excited for the Dragoon and Astro rework that will be coming in, I don't know, about 2 years from now? If you can think that far ahead, let me know what you think in the comment section of the video below. Are you for or against the 1 week delay in Savage? And would you rather Sephiroth go unchanged, or do you think these changes are necessary? Anyway, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.